This semester, I had the privilege of working with the middle school band director from Reynoldsburg at Hannah Ashton Middle School and Wagner Road, as well as one of the band directors in Grove City at Park Street and Hayes Intermediate. While there, I observed many real-life scenarios of topics we discussed in class, such as teacher-student relationships, classroom management, and assessment. In both schools, I witnessed different teacher-student relationships. Natalie Steele-Royston says in her article, Improving Music Teaching Through Interpersonal Relationships, relationships are built through repeated encounters as well as clear boundaries and expectations, both of which allow individuals to come to know what to expect from one another. I could see this most clearly in Grove City when the band director interacted with his students both in the lesson and apart from the lesson. The students worked hard and performed well in class because he had high expectations for them. This came up in a conversation I had with him as well. He said the students want to be pushed and that when you set the bar high, they're willing to work for it. I could also see the students' expectations of him. They expected him to be ready for class and to help them learn. They weren't afraid to make mistakes, and this was reinforced whenever there was a problem or mistake, and he would help them fix it and class would continue. This built trust between the student and the teacher, allowing the students to thrive in the classroom. Classroom management is closely related to student-teacher relationships. In Grove City, with the trust and expectations of both student and teacher being there, the students were very well behaved. Once during a sectional, the students were very chatty. The band director gave instructions to pull out their tuning slide so they could buzz through the lead pipe. And as the students did their assigned task, they also started to talk. The band director did not make a big deal out of it, but countered it with, "I said to pull out your slides, not to start talking." The class immediately stopped talking without any fuss, and class continued. This was not the only time something like this happened, but as soon as the teacher said something to any class about not talking, they stopped. The students understood the expectations and worked hard to meet them. I also observed an instance of poor classroom management. In the chapter titled Conan's Concepts for Managing Whole Group Instruction by Everson et al., the skills with itness and overlapping are discussed. It is stated that a teacher who is with it and exhibits good overlapping skills is able to insulate lessons from the intrusions that student misbehavior or external interruptions might cause. The author explains that with itness means the teacher can correct behavior and prevent the situation from escalating. Overlapping means they can handle multiple events at once without the classroom falling apart. In my example, a student who seemed to be normally well-behaved was talking when she should not have been. The teacher called her out on it and asked her a question referencing the talking in class. The student refused to answer, and it resulted in a long, awkward stare-down between the student and the teacher in the middle of class. I learned a lot of tricks of the trade for responding to misbehavior at the 2018 OMEA conference. I attended the They Have Noisemaker session by Angela Ammerman. She listed 3 tools for handling misbehaving: proximity, the hand, and concern for the student. Proximity is simply standing closer to the student, which does a couple of things. It lets the student know that you are there and that you know they are there, but it also gives a nonverbal warning that their behavior is not acceptable. If proximity is not possible, you may also use the hand. This is another nonverbal communication that the behavior is not acceptable, you see it, and it needs to stop. This again tells the student, yes, you see them and you are acknowledging they are a student in your class. Sometimes that you may need to pull a student aside and ask them if everything is okay. You don't know all about their lives outside of school, and this lets them know that you care about them. My last and favorite new tool is to move the student from the place they are sitting to a different place in the room. Angela Ammerman warned us to never threaten taking away the privilege of being in the class. Instead, she advised us to put the student either in a different section, say if it's a saxophone into the trombone section, or in a completely different part of the room. She said sometimes you can move them to the front because they want to be on their best behavior in front of their peers and show off their skills. I also learned a lot about classroom assessment from both Reynoldsburg and Grove City. In Reynoldsburg, the main assessments used were playing tests and short written tests each week, usually with questions taken from the beginning band book. In his article, Music Assessment Concepts, Edward Esmus discusses the different types of assessments teachers can use with their students. There are several types of assessments I've seen used in the schools. Both in Reynoldsburg and Grove City, there were student learning objectives, usually shortened down to SLOs. These were used for summative assessments, given both at the beginning of the year and then the same test again at the end of the year to show progress students have made in learning. Another form of assessment, the alternative assessment, was used mainly in Reynoldsburg. The teacher gave her students plain tests over exercises in the book every week. In Grove City, the band director did not use plain tests, but he did give evaluations at the end of April to determine seating placements for next year when the students are in middle school. To determine their seating placement, he used a rubric, which MUS defines as a set of scoring criteria used to determine the value of a student's performance on assigned tasks. The rubric covers criteria such as how many mistakes they made, their tone, quality, tempo, etc. Something I found interesting about the rubric was that it is the same rubric and musical excerpts for the rising 7th graders as it is for the rising 8th graders. Overall, I learned a lot about teacher-student relationships, classroom management, and music assessment. I am grateful for the experiences I had to observe real-life situations of concepts we talked about in class. Thank you.